Welcome to American National Government. In this course, you will discuss the purpose, structure, and evolution of United States government.
I'm Jordan O'Connell, History and Government Instructor at Northeast Iowa Community College. This lecture distills a decade of my written notes taken from American Government, Roots and Reform, American Government by Lenz and Holman, and our course-assigned OpenStax American Government textbook. This lecture focuses on civic engagement and the maintenance burden. The core question is this: why do civic engagement, volunteerism, and service matter when democratic ideals depend on citizens doing more than voting? The core competency is to illustrate the importance of civic engagement, volunteerism, and service in the safeguarding of our democratic ideals. What does civic responsibility amount to when a republic needs service, participation, and trust, but its institutions regularly waste all three? The problem moves through association, jury service, volunteer institutions, public meetings, and the unglamorous labor required to keep Republican life usable. Civic engagement is often reduced to a lifestyle preference. Some people volunteer, some people vote, some people attend meetings, some people post about public issues. That language understates the problem. A constitutional system does not maintain itself. It requires inspection, staffing, complaint, repair, and trust building from people who rarely hold formal office. Civic engagement is the maintenance burden of self-government. If citizens stop carrying that burden, the machine does not explode in one dramatic scene. It corrodes. Boards go unchallenged. Juries shrink in quality. Local meetings fill with the few who have time or anger to attend. Bad information spreads without correction. Public trust collapses and then gets cited as the reason for further withdrawal. Sentimental civics is too thin. Voting counts, but voting alone does not sustain a republic between elections. Service counts, but service detached from public accountability can become charity without citizenship. Protest counts, but protest alone cannot administer a school district, a jury calendar, a library board, or a flood response. The real question is which habits keep constitutional self-rule usable in ordinary life. Civic engagement means citizens taking responsibility for the parts of public life that no statute can run by itself. They vote. They serve on juries, they join associations, they monitor local government, they organize around neglected problems, they volunteer in institutions that hold communities together, they build social capital, which means the networks and trusts that let people cooperate beyond family and private gain. None of that sounds cinematic. That is one reason it is easy to underrate. The civic problem is brutal because maintenance work receives less glory than outrage. A viral post can attract more attention than months of school board attendance or neighborhood organizing. A national election can absorb more emotional energy than the zoning decision, jury summons, public health board, or local budget hearing that shapes daily life more directly. If citizens confuse spectacle with citizenship, the constitutional machine will keep running, but fewer people will know who tuned it, who warped it, and who stopped bothering to check the bolts. American political theory linked rights to responsibility from the start. The Declaration of Independence listed grievances and then claimed that governments derive just powers from the consent of the governed. Consent is not a one-day ritual. It implies ongoing attention, judgment, and public character. A people that vanishes after ratification or election cannot honestly call itself governing. That is why local associations became so important in American civic development. Churches, mutual aid societies, volunteer fire companies, newspapers, schools, veterans groups, unions, reform clubs, neighborhood groups, and charities all trained citizens in cooperation before they held office. Tocqueville noticed this pattern early. Americans formed associations not only because they liked joining things, but because associations solved collective problems in a large republic where central authority could not and should not direct every local task. Volunteerism belongs in this story because many public goods depend on unpaid or underpaid work outside the formal state. Food banks, youth programs, tutoring, disaster relief, faith-based service, cemetery upkeep, public events, library support, neighborhood safety, and countless local efforts reduce strain on government and build habits of reciprocity. Yet volunteerism is not a substitute for government in every area. If a county fails to fund defense counsel, a bake sale will not preserve due process. If a city tolerates housing discrimination, private kindness alone will not fix the legal structure. Volunteer labor can strengthen the civic ecosystem without replacing public duty. A more passive model was available. Citizens might have treated politics as a periodic consumer choice: vote, complain, and leave management to professionals. Many modern systems drift in that direction. The attraction is obvious. Specialization saves time. Bureaucrats administer.
Elected officials decide. Citizens get on with life. The cost appears slowly. Once citizens stop practicing self-government in smaller settings, they lose the habits needed to judge institutions well. They become easier to manipulate, easier to isolate, and more likely to confuse politics with entertainment or branding. Jury service shows how old this tension is. The jury is civic labor. Citizens leave work, listen to evidence, judge credibility, deliberate with strangers, and help decide whether the state may punish. That is maintenance burden in one of its clearest forms. A constitutional system does not outsource that judgment entirely to professionals because concentrated state power needs ordinary citizens inside the room. The American Republic leaned on civic labor long before social scientists named it. New England town meetings, church committees, voluntary fire companies, militia musters, abolition societies, temperance groups, mutual aid networks, and jury pools all train citizens to argue, organize, and carry out common tasks. Alexis de Tocqueville noticed in the 1830s that Americans formed associations whenever they faced a problem too large for one household and too local for a distant capital. That habit proved consequential because the Constitution set up representative institutions but did not script daily maintenance. Election law still required poll workers, local parties, registrars, printers, and canvassing boards. Courts still required jurors, witnesses, clerks, and citizens willing to tolerate the cost of service. Public schools, libraries, poor relief, and civic festivals still depended on committees, subscriptions, and local trust. The maintenance burden did not appear after a crisis. It was baked into the ordinary operation of self-government from the start. The maintenance burden becomes visible when a public institution begins to fail. A town council stops communicating clearly. A school board cuts public comment or hides budget choices behind jargon. A county jury pool underrepresents major parts of the community. A disaster exposes weak local coordination. A neighborhood loses trust in police, schools, or public health officials. At that point, civic engagement stops sounding inspirational and starts sounding practical. Who shows up, who reads the agenda, who asks for records, who explains the issue to neighbors, who serves on the board nobody wanted, who volunteers for the shelter, the food pantry, the tutoring program, the legal aid clinic, the cleanup day, the translation table, the parent association. Voting remains the most obvious form of engagement because it allocates formal power. Yet even voting requires maintenance. Citizens need registration rules that work, trustworthy information, enough civic literacy to identify the office at stake, and enough discipline to look beyond campaign branding. Turnout does not emerge from magic. Parties, campaigns, community organizations, churches, unions, campus groups, and media all shape whether citizens feel called into the process or shut out of it. Jury service exposes a less glamorous side of responsibility. Many citizens treat summonses as annoyances to dodge. The constitutional system treats them as labor required for legitimate adjudication. If only the retired, the affluent, the unusually patient, or the involuntarily available serve, the jury pool skews. That skew changes verdict quality and public trust. Dodging jury duty may feel private, but the cost is public. Civil society carries equal weight. Associations between the individual and the state build social capital, which means the trust and habits that make cooperation possible. A church pantry, a union meeting, a youth sports league, a neighborhood watch, a tenants group, a veterans post, a local paper, or a school booster club can each teach people how to deliberate, fundraise, solve disputes, and notice failure. They can also teach exclusion, conformity, and panic. Civic engagement is not automatically noble. It becomes responsible when it builds public capacity without crushing dissent or hiding abuse. Civil disobedience deserves its place here because maintenance does not mean obedience at all costs. When institutions protect injustice, some citizens break laws publicly and nonviolently to expose the contradiction between constitutional principle and lived reality. That act still belongs to the maintenance burden if it aims to repair public standards rather than merely advertise personal purity. The civil rights movement did not maintain American democracy by quietly accepting exclusion. It maintained constitutional principle by forcing the country to face its own breach. Public service then links civic engagement to institutions directly. Teachers, soldiers, election workers, public defenders, social workers, public health staff, firefighters, librarians, transit workers, and local board members all perform public labor that keeps the constitutional machine credible. The label public servant belongs to clerks, teachers, nurses, inspectors, caseworkers, and jurors long before it belongs to a presidential speech. Election administration belongs in the same conversation because a republic does not count itself. Someone recruits poll workers, updates voter rolls, prints ballots, tests machines, opens precincts, verifies provisional ballots, explains ID rules, secures chain of custody, and certifies the totals under public scrutiny. Citizens can staff those roles, observe them, or ignore them until distrust explodes after the fact. The maintenance burden therefore includes ordinary electoral paperwork as much as public commentary after the fact. The pressure against engagement is real. Work schedules, childcare, distrust, mobility, digital distraction, partisan disgust, and economic strain all reduce participation. The answer cannot be scolding alone. Institutions should lower barriers to participation where they can. Citizens still face a hard truth. If they want a self-governing society, someone must do the maintenance and no algorithm will volunteer for them. The Declaration's line that governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed was written to justify rebellion, but it kept working long after independence because it shifted responsibility onto the governed themselves. If consent is the source of power, then withdrawal carries a political price. The line stops being ceremonial once local boards, juries, election offices, and volunteer institutions begin to fail and nobody shows up to repair them. That source language is sharp because it flatters no one. It does not promise that institutions will run themselves once rights are declared. It implies that citizens owe ongoing labor to the very machinery that protects them. Voting is one part of that labor. Jury service is another. So are association, organizing, record checking, public comment, and the slow work of keeping a local institution from becoming a private club for the already present. The pressure intensifies when community is invoked as a shield. Strong networks can support schools, maintain food banks, and coordinate disaster relief. The same networks can police outsiders, suppress dissent, and protect local abuses from outside scrutiny. Civic language therefore works like a test rather than a complement. Who is being asked to serve, who is being excluded, and who gets to define the common good? Civil disobedience exposes the hardest edge. A republic needs legal obedience in most situations, yet it also depends on citizens willing to confront laws and institutions that betray constitutional principle. Sit-ins, freedom rides, jury refusals, or organized refusal to accept local abuse all turn citizenship from applause into risk. The source tension lives there. Compliance keeps the machine running, but correction keeps the machine worth running. Civic engagement should therefore be treated as infrastructure, not decoration. Citizens express values through engagement, but they also maintain the conditions under which constitutional government can still claim consent, competence, and legitimacy. Jury service keeps adjudication tied to the public. Voting allocates formal authority. Volunteerism and association build trust and problem-solving capacity. Public service turns constitutional promises into daily practice. Protest and civil disobedience expose failures when formal channels calcify. The cost of non-participation is easy to underestimate. Withdrawal does not create neutral space. It leaves power to those already organized, already funded, already angry, or already inside the institution. Apathy is not the absence of politics. It is a political gift to whoever remains in the room. That does not mean every citizen must participate in the same way. One person may serve on juries and vote in every election. Another may organize tenants, coach youth, or staff a food distribution network. Another may work in public health or teach civics. The machine needs different kinds of labor. What it cannot survive is a culture that praises citizenship while treating maintenance as someone else's job. The unresolved judgment remains stubborn. Is civic engagement mainly a private choice that citizens may scale up or down as life permits? Or is it a standing obligation of membership in a constitutional order that depends on public upkeep? The answer shapes how seriously a republic treats later questions about trust, service, protest, and democratic decline. The unresolved question is whether civic life can survive when citizens demand competent institutions but withdraw from the work that sustains them.
If you're curious how I'm using AI to build these lectures and reshape higher education, visit thelibertytolearn.com. I'll see you in class.